You're sitting on the couch, scrolling through your phone while feeling that familiar itch. You know the one. The voice in your head whispers, just one time, you've got this under control. Sounds familiar? Well, my friend, today we're diving into the 5 worst mistakes people make when trying to quit porn. These are the pitfalls that can turn your journey to freedom into a never-ending cycle of relapse and guilt. But don't worry, because by the end of this video, you'll be equipped with all the knowledge and tools you need to steer clear of these traps. Number 1, I can handle just one last session. Alright, let's talk about the biggest trap of them all. The idea that you can have just one last session. This is the voice of addiction at its finest. And let me tell you, it's a sneaky little liar. This mindset is a classic example of the one last time fallacy. You convince yourself that indulging just one more time will somehow help you quit. But here's the truth. Every time you indulge, you're reinforcing the neural pathways associated with your addiction. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. Your brain doesn't understand moderation when it comes to addiction. It's wired to want more. And each last session strengthens the addiction, making it harder to quit. Think of it like this. Every time you allow yourself just one more, you're digging the hole a little deeper. And the deeper the hole, the harder it is to climb out. This is why the idea of having control over your addiction is a dangerous illusion. Even more if you're on a long streak. You can't outsmart addiction by indulging in it, especially a drug addiction like pornography is. It's uncontrollable by definition. So, how do you avoid this trap? The key is to adopt a mindset of total commitment. Understand that quitting means no exceptions, no last sessions. When the thought crosses your mind, remind yourself that every time you indulge, you're reinforcing the enemy you're trying to kill. Instead of focusing on one last time, focus on what you're gaining by quitting. And trust me, it's totally worth the effort. Another thing you could do, by the way, is replacing your habit of fapping with a different one. For that, you first need to identify the reasons that make it happen, like the time of the day, the triggers, or the environment, and what you usually do before and after a session. Then you need to replace those two things, or at least the before thing and your session with new healthy habits. For example, let's say you've noticed that you tend to fap right after getting home from work. You feel stressed and use it as a way to unwind because you don't know it's a psyop and you haven't subscribed to this channel yet. You might also observe that this usually happens after you've spent some time alone, scrolling through your phone, or just before taking a shower. To replace this routine, you could make a small but meaningful change to the before part of your habit. Instead of scrolling through your phone when you get home, you could do a 15-minute workout at home. And instead of heading into your fapping session after your workout, you could try learning a new skill, working on a project, or just read a book about something you're interested in it. As for the after part, instead of ending your session with feelings of guilt, you could reward yourself with something positive, like preparing a healthy snack, enjoying a hobby you love, or even journaling about your day and the progress you're making. By making these small shifts, you can completely restructure any bad routine into a good one. Number 2, masturbation without porn, aka the "at least I'm not watching porn" trap. Next up, we've got the tricky terrain of masturbation without porn. On the surface, it might seem harmless. After all, you're not watching porn, right? But here's why it's a mistake that can seriously sabotage your progress. The problem with this approach is that it keeps the addiction alive in a different form. When you masturbate, even without pornography, you're still engaging the same neural circuits that feed your addiction. This can keep the cravings alive and make it much easier to slip back into watching it. But let's dig a little deeper. Your brain doesn't just get addicted to the visual stimuli of porn. It gets addicted to the entire ritual, the anticipation, the build-up, the climax. Masturbation, even without porn, triggers the same dopamine pathways, and this can keep the addiction cycle running. Here's a metaphor. Imagine you're trying to quit smoking, but you still allow yourself to chew nicotine gum. Sure, you're not inhaling smoke, but you're still feeding the nicotine addiction, making it harder to quit entirely. The same principle applies here. By masturbating, you're keeping the addiction alive, even if it's in a lighter form. The best way to avoid this mistake is to go all in on your commitment to quit. This means not just quitting porn, but also taking a break from masturbation, at least in the early stages of your recovery. Give your brain time to reset and break free from the dopamine cycle. Number 3, the light porn myth. Alright, now let's talk about something a lot of people fall for, the myth of light porn. You know, the idea that watching softcore or tamer content is okay because it's not as intense as hardcore porn. Let me be clear, this is a dangerous misconception. This idea that light porn is somehow better or less harmful is a slippery slope. The problem is that any kind of porn, no matter how light, feeds the same addiction pathways in your brain. It's like trying to quit sugar by only eating candy with 50% less sugar. You're still feeding the addiction, and over time, your cravings for more intense content will likely return. Pornography addiction isn't just about the content, it's about the behavior. Watching any kind of porn, whether it's softcore or hardcore, keeps the addiction alive. Your brain doesn't distinguish between light and heavy when it comes to dopamine. It just craves the hit. In fact, watching light porn can be even more insidious because it gives you a false sense of control. You might think, well, this isn't as bad as what I used to watch, so I'm doing okay. But in reality, you're still reinforcing the same unhealthy patterns, making it that much harder to quit for good. But the solution here is simple. Don't fall for the light porn trap. If you're serious about quitting, you need to cut out all forms of porn, no exceptions. It's about breaking free from the entire cycle, not just downgrading your addiction. It's also crucial to be honest with yourself. If you find yourself rationalizing that certain types of content are okay, take a step back and recognize that this is the addiction voice talking. Stay focused on your goal of total freedom, and remind yourself that any form of porn is a step in the wrong direction. Number 4, relying solely on willpower, aka the white knuckle approach. Now, let's talk about the most classic mistake of all. This is what I like to call the white knuckle approach, gritting your teeth and trying to force your way through cravings with sheer determination. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. And the reason for that is simple. Willpower is a finite resource. It's like a muscle that gets tired the more you use it. If your entire strategy for quitting porn is to just try harder and resist temptation, you're setting yourself up for failure. Eventually, your willpower will run out, and when it does, you'll find yourself right back where you started. Plus, willpower is a function of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-control, which is in really bad shape now. After all these years flooding your brain with dopamine at such high intensity. Extra plus, when you're faced with strong cravings, especially after a long day or when you're stressed, your brain shifts into a more primal mode, driven by the amygdala, the part that craves immediate pleasure and reward. This is why willpower alone often isn't enough to overcome addiction. Moreover, when you rely solely on it, you're constantly in a state of resistance. This can lead to something called ego depletion, where your mental resources get drained, making you more susceptible to giving into temptation. It's like trying to hold your breath underwater. You can only last so long before you need to come up for air. So, what's the alternative? Well, instead of relying on a Super Saiyajin willpower, focus on building systems and habits that make it easier to quit. This might mean setting up blocks on your devices or creating a daily routine that keeps you busy and engaged like the ones we talked before. It's also important to practice self-compassion. Understand that quitting porn is a process, and setbacks are a normal part of that process. Instead of beating yourself up when you slip, recognize it as an opportunity to learn and strengthen your resolve. Never feel miserable or uncertain. Number 5, the "I'll wait for the good moment to quit" delusion. Finally, let's talk about what is, arguably, the most dangerous mistake: waiting for the right time to quit. You know the deal. I'll quit when I'm ready. I just need to get through this stressful period. Or, I'll stop when life calms down a bit. These are classic lines we tell ourselves to justify putting off the decision to quit. The problem here is that there's never a perfect time to quit. Life is always going to be stressful, there will always be challenges, and if you're waiting for the stars to align before you quit, you'll simply be waiting forever. The idea that you need to quit when you're ready is an illusion, a way for your addicted brain to delay taking action. Every time you put off quitting, you're sending a message to your brain that pornography is valuable, a coping mechanism, something to be kept around. This makes the addiction stronger, and the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to escape from it. It becomes a fake crutch that you lean on during tough times, and the idea of quitting becomes scarier because you've made it such an ingrained part of your life. The truth is, the best time to quit is now. There will never be a perfect moment, so you need to create that moment. Now, I know how weak and scared you guys are at the moment, and I know it seems hard. So if you can't do it, don't worry, I'll do it for you. In a few weeks, a Signal video will be launched on this channel. This video will contain the ultimate step you need to take to break free from your addiction forever. That way, the day it happens, you'll know that this is the most perfect time to take your decision. So stay tuned. For now, we keep breaking through the walls of the labyrinth, one after another. Alright guys, this is the end of the video. Hope you liked it. If you did, well, you know what to do. And if you've made any other mistake in your own journey, please share your experience in the comments section. It might help someone else avoid the same pitfalls. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.